Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, shiur Torah. Bruchim Aba'im. We are starting, Baruch Hashem, a new week, continuing our Jewish HaShkafa. But of course, now we have a Jewish HaShkafa with a new reality, a reality without Rav Kanievsky in our midst. But nonetheless, his Sfarim, his stories, his Chesed, his Torah will forever live on, and this shiur will be for the Ilui Nishmat of Chaim Shmeriyahu Chaim Yosef Kanievsky, ben the Rav Yaakov Israel Kanievsky, and also for Ilui Nishmat of Moshe ben Chaim and Sarah bat Berel, and Havdil also for a refuah shlema of Chaim Yitzchak ben Rachel, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, and also for the Atzlacha Rabba of Marsha bat Julie, Ayla bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Louis ben Marsha, Shaul ben Farzane, and all of Am Yisrael, all of the righteous Noahides that continue to watch our shiurim, support our work, of course, most importantly, do their Avodat Hashem day in, day out to continuously get closer to Hashem and overcome the obstacles that obviously don't seem to let down, no matter how hard you work. So of course, everybody in the world has heard about the tragic situation that we're in right now, where the prophecy that's stated in the Gemara and by Chazal in many places, that the generation before Mashiach is going to be an orphan generation, where there's going to be a reality where there's less and less gedolim, where en al mi lismoch ela lavinu shebashamayim, where there will be nothing to rely on other than our Father in heaven. And of course, as we've seen over the last decade or a decade and a half, we've seen some of the greatest sages leave us, and now another one of the greatest sages that was really known by everybody, whether you are a Chassid, a Litai, Ashkenazi, Sfaradi, secular, Jewish, non-Jewish, everyone knew Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and everyone heard the stories, everyone has heard of the wonders, and most importantly, everyone heard the dedication, the unwavering dedication that Rav Kanievsky had for the Torah. And this gadol, is not something that people really truly understood unless they learned Torah themselves. Most people, when you tell them someone is a gadol b'Torah, is big in the Torah, they figure, yeah, but there's also big philosophers, there's big scientists, there's big engineers, there's big this, there's big that, so they figure this is just another subject. Most people truly don't understand what it really means to be a gadol b'Torah. But they do understand stories. They understand stories that involve other people. And perhaps tonight we'll also, aside from continuing our series of the Jewish HaShkafa, we're going to say a few things l'kvod Torato, for the honor of the giant Rav Chaim Kanievsky, things we've heard, things we've read about Rav Chaim that perhaps you've heard, and it's good to hear it again, perhaps you haven't. Rav Chaim Kanievsky was not your normal boy that in today's world had the desires of today's world of playing PlayStation or playing basketball or being the richest man on the block. The desire that Rav Chaim Kanievsky had since his childhood was simply to learn more and more Torah. But the dedication that he had was not any less than the achievements that he made due to that dedication. By the time he was 16 years old, or 15 years old, he already completed the Shas Bavli twice, which anyone that has learned the Shas knows how unbelievable that is. A person that's never really learned Gemara, or at least never dedicated themselves to learning Gemara on a serious basis, doesn't really understand what that actually means. Okay, so he finished the Shas twice at 16 years old. Okay, so great. Congratulations. He was really smart. But the truth is that most people don't understand what that means. And we're going to try to give some stories about Rav Chaim Kanievsky that perhaps will give us a different perspective than what most people have. Of course, there are many fools out there that wrote articles against them and spoke against them, even mocked them on secular television in Israel. And of course, the Gemara says that a person that makes fun, mocks the sages, en trufa lemakato. There's no cure for their ailment, and this is not something that is out of this world. This is still, nonetheless, still very much part of the world. But to give you an understanding of some of the things that Rav Chaim Kanievsky did or lived through, there is a famous story where Rav Chaim Kanievsky was very stringent in regards to the customs of the Chazon Ish, his great uncle, the Chazon Ish. Of course, the series that we're reading, and although he was not someone that necessarily grew up this way at all times, or was told to do this way, he chose to do this, and he stuck to it his whole life. And of course, the customs that you have are many times they're chumras, they're stringencies. And he wouldn't waive, he wouldn't change anything for it. It's some of the things that would seem illogical to the average person were things that were standard to him, and he would never change anything. And needless to say, he was very adamant about the fact of the words of the sages that said in the Gemara that you're not allowed to leave a water uncovered for overnight. This was something that's in the Gemara, and the reason why they said it, if water is left uncovered, let's say it's in a glass cup or a pot that has water in it, or milk, whatever it is, and you left it uncovered, you're not allowed to drink it, lest this you be poisoned, because it could have been that there's a snake that drank from it and left poison in the cup, and a person can die. Now, this was very much a reality in those days when the Gemara was written a couple of thousand years ago. But the Chazon Ish had a custom that even if you left this water or milk, unattended, even for a few moments, you shouldn't drink it, for the very same reason, for the snake. Now, of course, this is not a custom that is common today, but while the first one, needless to say, is. As far as not drinking something that's uncovered overnight for reasons, like I said, whether it be the snake. Some say it's also because of ruchot, different spirits that could enter the liquid. But the point being is that when Rav Chaim Kanievsky held to this custom, will give you an understanding of to the degree. The story is that there was one time that the Rabbanit Kanievsky, Batsheva Kanievsky, that was an extraordinary tzadikah of her own, that did an endless amount of chesed. And the biggest chesed she did for Am Yisrael was to simply support and help Rav Chaim Kanievsky to learn non-stop throughout his whole life. And one time when she was, it was a time of poverty, where to get a pot of milk was very rare, very difficult. She was heating a pot of milk for the children in the house, and this is all they had. It was either this, it was nothing. Now, of course, she's heating it, she's making sure that everything is good, and there's a knock at the door. And she walked away from the pot, and opened the door, saw who it was, and then went back to the pot. And literally a matter of maybe a minute or two passed between her answering the door to getting back to the pot. And she remembered, oh no, the Rav, Rav Chaim, her husband, he holds on to this stringency of the Chazon Ish, that even if you're walking away from it for a moment, for unattended for a minute or so, that's it, you have to throw it out. But at the same token, we're not going to have anything to eat, we're not going to have anything to drink. So she went to Rav Chaim, and she had to push herself to disturb him while he's learning. And she said, Rav Chaim, this is what happened. I walked away for 1 minute, but really it was just 1 minute. I mean, nothing could have happened. Rav Chaim says, no, this is the rule. This is what we hold by. You have to throw out the whole pot of milk. You have to throw it out. Of course, the Rabbanit, Tzadikah, Kedosha, listened to her husband, because that's what Tzadikot do. And she knew that there's if he said it, this is Da'at Torah, this is what you're supposed to do. She went back, but never did she expect in her wildest dreams for what followed to happen, which is that as soon as she poured the pot of milk into the sink, a small dead snake came out along with it. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to make sure that the Rabbanit is protected, but even more so to see how strong are the words of Rab Chaim Kanievsky, where he says one thing and that's what it is. Now again, for some people saying, yeah, but what's the chances? Well, let's see if you're going to say the same thing again. The dedication that Rav Chaim Kanievsky had for the Torah was something that everyone knows about, but at the same token in Shamayim, in heaven, HaKadosh Baruch Hu enjoyed his Torah. And how do we know? This is one small example. The one time that Rav Chaim Kanievsky was learning his Torah, and he got to a section of the Torah, a section of the Gemara, where you had to analyze the difference between the grasshopper that is kosher, the one that the Yemenites eat, as their custom is, and some Moroccans do also to this day, and the ones that obviously are not kosher. And he's learning this sugya, this very complicated issue, and he realizes that really the only way for him to truly understand what it says here and how to evaluate the difference between a kosher chagav and a non-kosher one is he has to look at one. He has to see a real one. So he asks one of his daughters that if she has her science book and she could bring it to him, and she brings him the science book. This little girl, his daughter, comes to him, brings him the science book, and she shows him, and he sees pictures of the grasshopper, and he said, "Still not enough. It's still not enough. I need more. I need to see a real one. I need to see a real one in order to learn your Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu." And he starts praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, "Please help me learn your Torah. I need to understand your Torah." And as you would have it, while the little girl is right, while his daughter is right next to him, and he's praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, miraculously, a grasshopper jumps through the window and lands right next to his book for him to observe. The grasshopper doesn't move as Rav Chaim looks at it in awe, in amazement, but at the same token, interest, looking at it, analyzing it, reviewing it from all the different sides. The grasshopper is not moving, as if it came from Shamayim to model for him. This wing, this leg, that leg. And Rav Chaim is analyzing this grasshopper to make sure that he understands the sugya perfectly, just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him to. And as soon as he completes reviewing everything and looking at everything from all sides, the grasshopper jumps away. As if he's completed his mission in the world, he's allowed Rav Chaim Kanievsky to learn more Torah. He's fulfilled his tikkun. When this story was told to the Rabbanit's father. Rabbi Yashiv was the Rabbanit Batsheva's father. When this story was told to Rabbi Yashiv himself, one of the Gdol Hador, he was awestruck. He says, they only say stories like this about Rishonim, about people that lived at the time of the Rambam, 900 years ago. Who in this generation has such things happen to them? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends them such a thing for them to learn His Torah. Even Rav Elyashiv was in awe of his son-in-law, of how amazing it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made such a miracle for him. Now, of course, the stories don't end there. They don't end there. The main thing that people know about Rav Chaim Kanievsky is that he learned a lot of Torah. But they also don't realize that for the last 30 years of his life, he opened his house to the public, making it a place of chesed. Literally endless amount of chesed went through that house. People were living in that house. People could come in and out on a regular basis. The amount of chesed that the Rabbanit Kanievsky did and Rav was involved in was literally endless. There was one time where Rav Chaim Kanievsky heard that there are women that unfortunately were not able to have babies. And he said that there's a skula. There's a skula that if we go to this kever of this tzadikah, that we pray over there, and the people that don't have children will have BeEzrat HaShem. Of course, the word came out that Rav Chaim Kanievsky is going to this kever on a specific day, and before you know it, there were several buses arranged of women that I've been waiting for a baby. I've been waiting for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give them a baby while the doctors told them it's impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. The trip was made. Rav Chaim Kanievsky took time out of his Torah, which again was some of a mesirut nefesh of its own. Went to the kever alongside with literally buses full of poor women that were crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give him a baby. Everyone prayed. Everyone cried. Everyone went home. And the Rabbanit Kanievsky, over the next year, did an exact calculation of who got it, and little by little she saw that virtually every woman that went got a baby. Things that are unbelievable. Years later, Rav Chaim Kanievsky again heard these stories of women that were crying about having babies, but this time he didn't publicize it. He just took the names. Took the names of the poor women that were looking for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's gift, the pre-bitten. He went, and nonetheless, the blessings were fulfilled again. Another time, there was a young boy in a cheder, learning Torah, but one day having a big headache. He says to his Abba, I can't see straight. My head hurts. Of course, anytime a little kid tells their parents that anything hurts, it's nerve-wracking, needless to say, if it's not something from a hit or something like that, and especially if it's the head. The father immediately takes him to the hospital. The hospital does all types of scans, CT scan, MRIs, and so on. The doctors come out of the scans after reviewing it, sweating bullets. The little boy is hardly able to move, laying in the bed. The doctors have a very, very long face. And with tears in their eyes, they tell the father, we're sorry, but there's nothing we can do. Your son's entire brain is full of cancer. There are growths practically in every part of the brain. And there's nothing we can do. We suggest that you just simply say goodbye. Enjoy whatever you can while he's here in the hospital. But he doesn't have much time left. Of course, the father broke down in tears, but knew that this is not something that's final. A Jew doesn't give up even if there is a sword on his neck. He and another family friend decide to go to Rav Chaim Kanievsky. To get to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and they cry to him, say, Kvod Rav, my little son, my boy in a cheder, learns Torah, loves Torah, little boy, 6, 7 years old. The doctors told me that he's not going to live. Rav Chaim Kanievsky said, bring the boy to me. Without second guessing anything, they went back to the hospital and he told me, I want my son. I said, what do you mean you want your son? He's in critical condition. You can't take him out. It's dangerous. We still need to do other procedures and help. He goes, no, I need my son right now. You have to sign this form to relieve us of any responsibility. I'll sign whatever you want. I want my son. They released the baby, the little kid. Right away, he gets to Rav Chaim Kanievsky. It's literally 6 o'clock in the morning. Right after the prayer, to get to Rav Chaim with the little boy. The first meeting was at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Rav Chaim Kanievsky accepted them with open arms as if it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The next meeting is several hours later, 6 o'clock in the morning. Rav Chaim takes the little boy, sits him next to him, and he says to him, tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the little boy, with his innocent, pure eyes, looks at Rav Chaim Kanievsky and with all seriousness says to him, I want to be like you, Rabbi. Rav Chaim took this to heart, got emotional, closed his eyes, and a few moments later opened them with a smile, looking at the father, and says, he's okay now. He's okay. The father took the baby back, the little boy, and they went back to the hospital. And they said to the hospital, to the doctors, I want you to do the same scans again. Why? We just did them last night. For what purpose? We already know what happened. I want you to do the same scans. But it's a lot of money. It's not free. He said, here's the deal. If the scans show exactly what they showed yesterday and nothing has changed, I'll pay for it, no problem. But if it's not the same, if it's changed, then you guys pay. The doctors, of course, didn't have a problem with such a deal. They weren't aware of such changes that happen in a matter of hours being physically possible. After doing the checks, the CT scans and the MRIs and all of the other things, they come out of the room sweating again and saying, where's the baby? Where's the kid? He said, that's him. You have him. No. It has to be a different kid. Where is the kid? Where's your son? He said, no, this is the same one. He said, it's impossible. We have this. They show him. This is the scans we had 7-8 hours ago. The whole brain is full of cancer. Here, so the scan we just took now, there's nothing there. What do you mean it's the same kid? It's the same kid. They did a check again. And the very same miracle appeared again. The brain was clean. Miracles like this are not something that you get just because you read a Harry Potter book. Miracles like this are not things that you have to live 2,000 or 3,000 years for, 2,003 years ago for. These are miracles that literally are alive and well in our day, within our reach, in our day. But of course, most would say, oh, so Rav Chaim Kanievsky was a miracle worker and must have thought who he was, must have been this, must have been that. How is he when it comes to the mitzvot of honoring parents? I mean, did he still honor his parents? It's a well-known story I've told in the past that when his father, the Stipler Gaon, was still alive, of course, Rav Chaim Kanievsky was already considered one of the Gedolei Ador already. But each year they would pray, and the place where Rav Chaim would sit was at one side of the synagogue, and where the Stipler, his father, would sit was at a different place of the synagogue, on the other side. But each year, at the same exact time, during Yom Kippur, Rav Chaim would get out of his chair and go stand next to his father. And every year this followed, and we're talking about these are older men. This is not a little boy looking for attention. This is one of the Gedolei Ador going to stand next to his father, another Gedolei Ador. One time, one of the Bachurim had a little chutzpah to ask Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Kvod Rav, I noticed for years that Kvodo goes in the same prayer and stands next to the Stipler, his father. Why do you do that? Why during that prayer? And Rav Chaim, without skipping a beat, would simply answer, I got scared, so I had to stand next to Abba. You, one of the biggest tzaddikim, one of the biggest chachamim in the generation, Anilui, got scared, but yet there are people walking among us that don't even observe Shabbat, and they're not scared. There are people giving lectures to the world, telling them that there's nothing to be afraid of, and they're not scared. There are people that are distorting the Torah to their likings, and they're not scared. But Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he was scared. Every Yom Kippur, he was scared. So he had to go stand next to Abba. Further, there was a time where the Stipler, one of his daughters, one of the women in the family was in the house, and she blurted out that, Chaim's back hurts. So immediately the Stipler, who was already an older man, stopped what he was doing and left the house. Nobody asked any questions. Perhaps he went to learn, like he always does. The Stipler went to the store, got some oil, went to his son's house, who was again already a married man with kids that are grown, comes to his house. Of course, as usual, the Rav Chaim Kanievsky is learning, as he did for nearly 17 or 18 hours a day, each day, his whole life, completing the Shas Bavli every year, the Shas Yerushalmi every year, the Sifra, the Sifri, the Zohar, the Midrash, the Shulchan Aruch, the Tanakh, and countless other things every single year. He called his Torah learning obligations, debts, that he had to fulfill each day. So for him, learning was like breathing. When his father shows up, of course, he stopped what he was doing, and the Stipler says, okay, I need you to take off your shirt and lay on the couch. I'm going to put some oil on your back and give you a massage. His Abba says so, and that's what he does. He lays on the couch, the Stipler gives him a massage, and then tells him, okay, now you go to bed, and you go to sleep all the way till the morning. Don't go back to learning tonight. Abba says, Rav Chaim does. He goes to bed. The Stipler comes back home, and the daughter asked him, where did you go? He said, I went to Chaim's house. What happened? You said his back hurts, so I went to give him a massage. I put some oil on him to make sure that he feels better. She says, no, I didn't mean that, Chaim. I meant my son, Chaim, the little boy. He got hurt. He hurt his back. Stipler says, okay, I got to go now. Where are you going now? I got to go back to Rav Chaim's house. Why? Because I know my son. If I told him If I told him not to go study, to go to sleep, that's what he's going to do, and he's going to end up wasting the whole night and not studying Torah. I know my son. What do we see from this? Did Rav Chaim's back hurt? No. But his father said it did. So he said, okay. Did Rav Chaim, was he able to study Torah? Yes. But his father said, don't study because your back hurts. The honor that he had for his Abba was something unbelievable. That if he said, it must be true. It must be that my back hurts. It must be that I need to sleep. If he came here to tell me, then he must be. There's no reason to question it. The type of honor that he had for his parents, the type of honor that he had for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for the Torah, was unbelievable. But of course, while most people know some of these stories, perhaps we need to spend a little more time looking at some of his writings and see if you find any similarities between what he says and some of the speakers that you've listened to in the past. And you tell me which speaker it sounds like. Now, Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had mercy on this generation and allowed some of the writings of Rav Chaim Kanievsky to be translated to English. And in this, one of these Sfarim that I have, it's a fantastic Sefer, I've quoted it in a few shiurim before, it's called Orchot Yosher. And it's both in Hebrew and English. And here, Rav Chaim gives teachings about different character traits of how to live a life of Torah for each letter of the alphabet. He writes some divrei Torah on it, which character trait it has to do with, and he put it in order so a person doesn't think that, oh, this character trait is more than one of the others, this is more important than the others, but incidentally, Torah is there twice. So the first one he mentions in Aleph is emet, the trait of speaking the truth. Well, Rav Chaim writes that a person who speaks the truth will succeed in avoiding all sins, as we find in the Midrash, Mea Mishloach, Otzar Midrashim, page 296, which states, those who speak truth never stumble into sins. Further, the Rav Chaim writes that the Sefer Chasidim, in a new edition, 1195, teaches that if one speaks the truth and has no desire to contemplate falsehood or to lie, then all his thoughts and words that he speaks come true, even when he does not intend them to command, even when he does not intend them as commands or directions. As it's written in Yov, the prophet Job, chapter 22, verse 28, you would utter a decree and it would be done. It follows that if one is careful never to lie, all the blessings that he gives will come true. Just as he is careful not to lie, so too heaven watches over him and ensures that everything he says turns out to be true and is fulfilled. Our sages also spoke severely about the punishment that awaits one who speaks falsely, stating that whoever is deceptive in his speech is considered as though he worshipped idols. Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin, page 92a. Here Rav Chaim tells us about the significance of telling the truth and the severity of lying. He brings also multiple sources about the severity of lying, where he says in the Gemara Masechet Sotah, page 42a, the class of liars is one of the four classes that do not receive the divine presence. Further, that the punishment for the liar, that even when he speaks the truth, no one will listen to him. Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin, page 89b. Since the entire Torah was practically in his head, for him to quote sources was not something that required a computer. As we know from one of the stories, that a Talmid Chacham that was writing a Sefer was looking for a certain statement, to quote a certain statement of the of one of the Chachamim of the previous generation, and he knew the statement. It was a well-known statement, but he couldn't find the source. He couldn't find the source, and he looked through different places, different books, for weeks. Could not find it. And he thought, B'siyata Dishmaya, let me go ask Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He went, knew exactly when the Rav prays, and when he finishes, and he waited right after the Rav finished, and he said for the Rav, where is this this particular statement? Rav Chaim Kanievsky closes his eyes and starts moving, saying, Bavli, no. Yerushalmi, no. No. And he just goes as if he is going through each one of the entire tractates, entire Shas, Bavli, Yerushalmi, Zohar, countless books. And he's going through them. And he says, what you're looking for is quoted on the bottom of the page in this particular Sefer of Kabbalah. That's where you'll find it. Of course, the Avrech was ecstatic about that he has the source. But what he didn't understand is how did the Rav just go to the entire Shas Bavli, the entire Yerushalmi, the entire Zohar, the entire Midrash, and countless other things in 30 seconds? How did that happen? How do you go through all of that? And so, how does that happen exactly? Rav Chaim Kanievsky brought many things in his Sefer. In regards to the same subject, he also writes that the Shla Kadosh writes in Sha'ar HaOtiyot, in Derech Eretz, that a father who wishes to be sure that his child will follow the straight path, even in private, when his father is not present, should have a cardinal rule, that he should guide him with his utmost ability in the attitude of truth, and emphasize to him in the punishment that comes to one who lies, even if he lies only in idle chatter. And he says that he had a relationship with a certain Sephardi tzaddik that had a custom that he admired. Rav Chaim is saying, I admired this custom that he had, where he had a rule in his house that, of course, there's kids in the house, there's trouble in the house. But anytime he came, he told, listen, whoever tells me the truth about what happened, I'll forgive him. But whoever lies about it, I'll punish them double. And this cardinal rule in the house accustomed all of the kids to tell the father the truth. Why? Because they know, okay, I told him the truth, I caused him trouble, I broke this, I did that, but if I told him the truth, he forgave me. Whereas if I lied, double punishment. And this literally created a house of truth. House of truth. Everyone became truth tellers. But here we see that Rav Chaim was not afraid of mentioning what's mentioned in the Torah endless times about reward and punishment as one of the principles of our faith. But then you would say, yeah, but okay, so he says that there's punishment. Everybody knows that there's punishment, but he's not mentioning some of the, scary stuff that's mentioned by Yaron Reuven about Gehenom and so on. Well, perhaps you need to read further. Later on, in this Sefer, in Orchot Yosher, BeEzrat, page 16, Rav Chaim Kanievsky brings the Gaon Mivilna in regards to the issue of Bitul Torah, neglecting of Torah. And he writes the following: there are 6 levels in Gehenom, and each one is composed of 10 sections. The 6th level includes all the others, and it's called death. It's there that the person who had the opportunity to study Torah and did not do so is judged. HaShem Yishmor v'Yatzil. Here, as if a standard subject, which it is among people that learn Torah, Rav Chaim talks about Gehenom, but not only Gehenom, gives you the specifics that a person that could have studied Torah and chooses not to, he even tells you which chamber in Gehenom they're going to cook him. The 6th level, which is one before the last and worst one. If that's not enough, he brings a Midrash Tanchuma. And he says, in Midrash Tanchuma, in the beginning of Parashat Vayekil, that in the future era, each person will be named according to his deeds. And when it comes to shame that people talk about, oh yeah, when there's judgment, there's embarrassment, what does that really mean? He gives you a small token of it. Someone who wasted his time or was lazy will for all eternity be left with the name the time waster or the lazy one. And the shame that he will experience in that world is much greater and has no comparison to the experience that in this world. As Rabbeinu Yonah writes in his commentary on Pirkei Avot. And for that reasons, the Rabbi stated in Gemara Masechet Moed Katan, Tet Bet, that the greatest punishment in the future era will be the shame that one experiences. But as long as a person is in this world, he is still able to mend his ways before it's too late. Here again, Rav Chaim Kanievsky talks about the significance of the punishment. That it's not just simply doesn't know how to be a soul, but rather has earned himself the title of the lazy one because he doesn't learn Torah when he could. Now, there was a time that one of the Roshei Yeshivot of the Mir Yeshiva, Rav Nachum Partzovitz, saw that a couple of the Bachurim in his yeshiva were wasting time. So when he walked up to them, they noticed him, and as he got closer, their conversation obviously changed, and all of a sudden they started bobbing back and forth and saying, ay, 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 as if they're studying. And as he got closer, he started saying, Tanu Rabbanan. And Rav Nachum, who was an extraordinary Talmid Chacham, looked at the Gemara that they're studying, Masechet Nedarim, and says to them, ay, 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 ay. And the entire Gemara Masechet Nedarim, there isn't one time that it says Tanu Rabbanan. Ay, 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 ay. Meaning, you're saying, ay, 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 Tanu Rabbanan, but that's in your mind because you're not reading. You think you're fooling me. You're fooling yourself. When the story came to Rav Kanievsky, Rav Kanievsky, again, closed his eyes. He's right. There isn't one Tanu Rabbanan in the entire tractate of Masechet Nedarim. But there is a De Tanu Rabbanan. One time. When the people that heard this story heard this, not only were they amazed at the Rav Partzovitz, but amazed at Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who confirmed it and gave a chidush that there is one time that there is De Tanu Rabbanan. When this story got to Rav Steinemann, Alav Shalom, Rav Aaron Leib Steinemann, Rav Aaron Leib Steinemann wasn't impressed. He said, "For the Rav, don't you think it's amazing?" He says to them, "It's only amazing if you don't understand what being an owner of a store means. When you go to the owner of the makolet, owner of a deli, and you ask him, where's the sugar? Where does he tell you? Oh, it's on aisle 3 in the middle. Where is the salt? Oh, it's on aisle 4 on the bottom. Where is a milk? Oh, it's on aisle 9 over there." The Baal Makolet, the owner of the makolet, the owner of the store, he knows exactly where every one of his goods is. So Rav Chaim, what is his makolet? What is his store? It's the Torah. So of course he knows where all of his goods are. Every letter, every word, every this. What? What did you expect from someone that makes his whole business? His whole business is the Torah. What did you expect? This, Rabotai, was a living Sefer Torah, full of miracles, full of chesed, full of kedusha, that is something that we only can aspire to learn his works. And I highly recommend, as I always do, for people to continue not just posting pictures of tzaddikim, not just buying books of tzaddikim, just to collect dust on your shelves, but to read them. To read those books. Because what's inside the book is who the tzaddik is. Now, of course, everyone knows the family connection between Rav Chaim Kanievsky and the Chazon Ish, as it appropriately fits our series here. We have the Chazon Ish taking us by the hand, teaching us how to be judges, how to judge the right way, judging ourselves, judging others. And in this extensive section, in chapter 3, the Chazon Ish has been telling us about the logic of man versus the logic of God, and how they're nothing alike. The logic of a Talmid Chacham, which is the logic of the Torah, in essence the logic of God, how it's nothing alike the logic of someone who doesn't learn Torah and is not a Talmid Chacham. And even if someone does learn Torah, it doesn't necessarily mean they are a Talmid Chacham. And of course, when a person is going to learn from a rabbi, learn from a Talmid Chacham, they have to know that they're not the same. The second you become friends with your rabbi, he's no longer your rabbi. The second that you think that you are on even ground, the learning has reached its peak. You have to find yourself a new rabbi. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that happens all too often with people today, where they exchange rabbis as often as they exchange jackets and clothes and cars. Why? Because they feel like they've learned enough from this rabbi, they've watched enough, they've heard enough. And unfortunately, there's nothing further from the truth. It's just that they want something else because they think that something else will help them. Now realizing that something else is not only not going to help them, but many times that something else will just feed their ego even more and stunt their growth spiritually for even longer. Some people have the courage and measure of truth deep enough in them that when they make a mistake, they admit it and they go back and fix it. But some people, their arrogance is way too big for them to allow themselves to admit that they've made a mistake. And they simply force themselves to live with that mistake, knowing that they have stopped growing spiritually, they have stopped learning, they have stopped serving HaShem in the same level, they've stopped doing anything that's in the same level that they did when they were on the right path. But once a decision, a decision. And there's honestly nothing worse than that a person can punish themselves with, knowing that you're living with a lie. Now, the Chazon Ish says that when a person does not value the tzaddikim, doesn't value chachamim the right way, he is destined to a bitter end. He is a person that's going to literally create their own punishment, because he's going to start finding faults in everyone but himself. As the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, he doesn't see an obligation in himself. He sees an obligation, a debt, a a deficiency in everybody else except himself. So many times, these people will find flaws in rabbis. Oh, look, I had one bad experience with this one rabbi. All rabbis are bad. Or this rabbi made a mistake that one time. He said this, but I found it on a different page. So I don't know if he's reliable anymore. And all types of harsh, horrific, severe judgments that they don't judge themselves that way, but they do judge the rabbis that way. Now again, I'm not talking about bad rabbis that are not really rabbis, that are, people that are heretics, that just, call themselves rabbis. I'm talking about honest people, people that have Yirat Shamayim, that either they did make a mistake, or you think they made a mistake, but people judge them as if they've become Amalek. And unfortunately, I've told you guys a few times where you have people that did tshuva, converted, got chizuk from our shiurim, and then before you know it, turn into enemies. Not even people that stopped watching the shiurim. Literally would turn into enemies because they heard something in one of the shiurim that they didn't like. One guy didn't like it that I told him that he has to respect his wife more because he has a wife that's a eshet chayil, and he's really not being fair to her with his behavior that he told me that he's doing, his jealousy, his arrogance, and all that other stuff. So what did he do? Not only did he turn me into an enemy, but he forced his wife to stop watching our shiurim. Why? Because he figured that that's how you're going to create shlom bayit. Before you know it, they're both going to become mechalei Shabbat like the rest of their family. I have no doubt about it. Not because I want it, chas v'shalom, but that's just because that's the path they're already going on. Another situation, you tell a woman, listen, you should not play games with your kid's education. You have to send him to a religious school, even though the father doesn't agree, even though the father's problematic, and so on and so forth. You have to do it. What does she do? Oh, no, this is a bad rabbi. Yeah, but this is the very same bad rabbi that paid for your kid's private education for 3 years. Now, no one said anything about that being a bad rabbi. No, bad rabbi. Okay, bad rabbi. Yishtabach shimo. Then you have another guy. Heard me in a shiur. I do not think that Jewish people need to have guns like they need to have emunah. What does he do? He makes a whole video about me. Makes a video about me how I'm putting Jewish people's lives in danger by telling them that they shouldn't have guns. Instead, have emunah. This is bad rabbi. And all types of jokers like this, unfortunately, are a dime a dozen. When you have thousands and thousands of people watching your shiurim, unfortunately, this is part of the painful process. The painful part is that not that you lost a student. Baruch Hashem, there's new ones coming in on a regular basis. It's that you invest a lot into each one, especially the ones that contact you and consult with you personally. And it's all for free. It's all at odd hours. It's all endless dedication. But even more so, you know that they're making the wrong decision, and that decision will cost them a lot. And it's already pain that you feel that they're going to end up enduring. And it ends up happening every single time. But unfortunately, this is what happens. I had a woman, Baruch Hashem, just the other day, tell me, listen, I have a situation with my family, and I wanted to ask you about it. I gave her strong MUSSAR about it. I said, no, absolutely not. You cannot do what you're looking to do. You can't do what you're looking to do, even though I know it's not going to be nice and people are going to be offended. You simply can't do it. She says, Rabbi, the last time you told me something like this was 3 years ago. I didn't listen to you. And because of that, I endured so much pain that I just got over it recently. Almost a divorce, breakup of the house, destruction of Parnassah, nightmare and a half for almost 3 years just because I didn't listen to something I didn't like that you said. I know better now. I'll listen to what you said. It's not because of me per se. Anybody that has Yirat Shamayim can give you the same type of advice. At least I hope so. The point is that sometimes you give people guidance and they choose to go against it because they think it's your opinion. They think that maybe they can get something else somewhere else. And what ends up happening is that they end up building themselves a bridge to nowhere. And that's why now I've changed a little bit in my responses with people. In the past, I was a little bit more naive where I would try to convince people to listen. Simply, I would tell them something. They would tell me, no, but I think this and that, and I would debate them. I would say, no, you really should listen. You should do this. You should do that. Now I don't do that anymore. Simple. I tell people what they do. They ask me a question. I tell them what they do. They say, I don't want to do it. I ask somebody else. You know what I do? I don't respond. Most of the time, I either don't respond or I simply say, okay. That doesn't mean that I agree with it. It just means that I pray that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has mercy on you because you're making a mistake. Now, of course, you could agree, you could disagree, by all means. The key is to understand is that when someone is giving you advice without an agenda and is following what the Torah says, whether it be me, or be Rabbi Mizrahi, or be any other tzaddik that's out there that's doing it, by all means, you should listen and not take it as advice that you could just shop around for. And of course, when you give people advice, when you know their situation and they end up going to get a second or a third or a fourth opinion, it shows you that you're simply wasting your time. They're just shopping around like your groceries. So now, this is all because the people don't have any concept of what the value of Torah is, don't have any concept of what Da'at Torah is, don't have any concept, no concept whatsoever of what the truth is, no concept whatsoever, and unfortunately, they miscalculated to such a severe difference between the reality and where they're at that they don't even see there's anything wrong with what they're doing. And unfortunately, this causes a lot of problems for people. And I know it from my experience, needless to say. I know it from the stories that I've heard from much greater, bigger, smarter rabbis than I am that have told me their war stories and how they've dealt with certain things. And you want to just pull your hair out because you literally see that people literally cause most of their own problems with their own decisions. As the Pasuk says, Ivelet Adam tesalef darko ve'al Adonai yiz'af libo. The stupidity of man will cause a person to sin against Hashem, and then he'll get angry at Hashem for punishing him. So the Chazon Ish is trying to guide us to perhaps judge better, do better. Hopefully we'll listen. And the first thing that we have to understand is that the logic of the Torah is not the logic of mankind. In fact, the two are nothing alike. The so-called rationalists, their whole premise is no different than what Korach did. Korach tried to rationalize the Torah. Korach was someone that had prophecy at some point. Korach was someone that was righteous at some point. Korach was extremely knowledgeable. Korach was extraordinarily wealthy. But Korach threw everything away into eternal damnation because he tried to rationalize the Torah. And when he heard that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving us mitzvot, that he heard from the mouth of God, and he says, this doesn't make sense. I don't think you heard God right. This doesn't make sense. It seems like it's too favorable to you. How is it that you are the leader, you're a Levi, and your brother is a Kohen? How could there be a Levi and a Kohen in the same family? Nah, I'm sure that God said that somebody else could be a Kohen. Why not me? No. God said that Aaron's going to be the Kohen. No, I think you heard that, but I don't think it really happened. I think you're making that up. Just like you're making up some of the other mitzvot. What other mitzvot? Look, he says, I have a tzitzit. You have a tzitzit. Your tzitzit that you're telling everybody else to make, it's a tzitzit that has one string of blue. One string of tchelet, really. It's not blue. Tchelet. My whole tzitzit is tchelet. What do you think about it? Moshe Rabbeinu says it's not kosher. That's not tzitzit. Hashem says one string is tchelet, not the whole thing tchelet. See, exactly, that doesn't make sense. I don't think God says what you says. Of course that if he said that one string is tchelet, it's probably the least you can do. But if my whole tzitzit is tchelet, I'm even better. That was the logic of Korach. Better said, he said, even another example. You said that I have to have a mezuzah on my house. But I don't need a mezuzah because I have 50 sifrei Torah, entire Torah scrolls, whereby a mezuzah only has a small paragraph that's from the Torah in it. In a little scroll, one paragraph is in it from the Torah. That's it. You don't have much in a mezuzah. Any avrech that wants to make a living can write a mezuzah. If you have a avrech that knows the writing and knows the sgulot and goes to the mikveh and so on, can write it nice, and also it's even more special, but more or less, there's no difference between one mezuzah and another mezuzah, aside from the significance of the acts that they do, but the writing is the same. Can't compare it to an entire Sefer Torah that has 304,805 letters. So I have, Korach says, my entire house is full of Sifrei Torah, one Sefer Torah after another, after another, after another, after another, because I feel that they give me more protection than that little mezuzah that you want me to buy for a couple $100. What do you think, Moshe? Moshe says, no, that's not what HaShem said. You're wrong. Korach says, see, doesn't make any sense. I don't think God said so. I think maybe Moshe, maybe you have some interest over here. You're trying to make money from the mezuzah business. And the rational logic of Korach made sense to Korach, made sense to 250 rabbis that were the biggest rabbis at the time in leadership position. But the Gemara says it didn't make sense to them because it made sense. It made sense to them because they were already being bribed by all the money that Korach was giving them. And as the Gemara says in a Masechet Ketubot, page 105b, that once a person gets shochad, once a person gets bribed, he now has a desire to fulfill the will of his briber. And these rabbis that got bribed, if you will, got money from Korach, all of a sudden, they saw truth in the words of Korach. And that landed all of them to eternal damnation, where there was an earthquake unlike any other, where Kadosh Baruch Hu opened the ground at the request of Moshe Rabbeinu to move the gate of Gehenom that was in the desert to exactly where they were, and to open that gate and swallow Korach. And then the plague that killed the others. Until this day, Korach and the rest of his rational, bribed followers are screaming that Moshe is Emet and his Torah is Emet and we are liars. That they say about themselves. But it made sense. Common sense is not divine sense. So the Chazon Ish is mentioning it time and time again, how a person has to know that you may or may not agree with your logic, with what the Torah commands, but that should never be the deciding factor of whether you do or you don't do the will of HaShem. And further he says in this section that when it comes to the bribes, once a person is bribed, their Torah views have become an abomination. Because the Torah itself created a reality that bribery has the power to blind and distort. And therefore the Torah warns us about it. Whereby the Chazon Ish says that there is, as soon as there is a bribe is something that not necessarily always monetary. The Gemara in Masechet Ketubot says that when in the Torah, in Parashat Shoftim, Parashat Shoftim, that first and foremost commands us to have judges, to have officers. This is actually a commandment on both the Jewish people and the Noahites. They have to have courts also. It's one of the Noahide laws. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'kol sha'arecha. So we have to have judges, we have to have a court system, but there's rules. Why? What's rules? That these judges have to be honest. If they're going to take bribes, it's better off not to have judges. It's better off not to have any system. And the Torah says, "V'lo tikach shochad, ki ha-shochad ya'aver enei chachamim v'yisalef divrei tzadikim." And do not you shall not accept a bribe, for the bribe will blind the eyes of the wise and make just words crooked. So the Chachamim ask in the Gemara, why is it called a bribe? Why doesn't the Torah just say money? Don't accept money. Somebody offers you $100 to rule in their favor. That's a bribe. So Gemara says, because shochad, the bribe, is not always in the form of money. Sometimes it comes in a different way. Sometimes the shochad comes in the bribe comes in non-monetary ways. Certain amount of respect, certain amount of position, a job, and so on. And the Gemara in Masechet Tubot, page 105b, gives several examples. Several examples of bribes. Well, first it says that, what does it mean in the Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 4, that Shlomo HaMelech says, what is he trying to teach in this verse, where he says, Melech b'mishpat ya'amid aretz, v'ish trumot yersena, that a king, through judgment, upholds the world, but a man of gifts overthrows it. What is Shlomo HaMelech saying here? This is one of the examples I noted here for myself, is that how a person cannot understand a single verse in the Torah or Tanakh without commentary by the sages. Why? Because if you read it simply, a king through judgment upholds the world, but a man of gifts overthrows it. What could it possibly mean to an average person? A king through judgments upholds the world. Already, he says, okay, so it's not relevant anymore because there's really virtually no kings. And all the kings that do exist don't really have any power. And the ones that do have some power, they are kings, they're not upholding the world. And as far as a person who likes gifts overthrowing the world, why would he overthrow the world? I like gifts. Who doesn't like gifts? Why is the Torah against gifts? This verse by the smartest man of all time, Shlomo HaMelech, doesn't make sense to the average person until they read the Gemara. And the Gemara says, what is Shlomo HaMelech trying to say here? If the judge resembles a king who does not require anything, then this judge is upholding the world, meaning he's fulfilling the entire Torah. He's giving the world a right to exist because the Torah is alive. But if he resembles a Kohen who goes around collecting granaries, collecting truma, then he overthrows it. Meaning that if this judge is someone that is judging without any bias, he's not looking for anyone to pay him any bribe, any kavod, any honor, any nothing. He's simply looking for the truth. That is a good judge that is in essence giving the entire world a right to exist. But if he's the type of judge that's looking for constant gifts, then this judge is going to destroy the world. Why? Because he's going to be bribed. So it's like a judge that's struggling for money. He's going to be afraid. He's going to be afraid to judge against rich people. Why? Because he thinks that, if I judge against the rich people, they're not going to hire me again. Same thing with lawyers. if I don't take the case of this rich client, or if I don't say what he wants me to say, then he won't hire me. So people like that bring destruction to the world. Now, the Gemara continues and says, in the name of Rava, what's the reason for the prohibition against taking a bribe? And it says that the reason why is that as soon as the person takes a bribe, he starts looking at things from the perspective of the person that bribed him, as if there's nothing wrong. Because he doesn't see wrong in himself, therefore he doesn't see wrong in the person that bribed him. Now, what kind of bribes are there? There's all types of bribes. Doesn't have to be a monetary bribe. The Gemara says it could be a bribe of words. A person that constantly says hello to you, compliments you. Or it could be a person that gave gifts. And it gives multiple examples of different chachamim that somebody came to them and brought them some type of gift, fruits or vegetables or horse or something. And they say to them, well, what's your business here? He says, oh, I'm actually going to be in your court today. I have a judgment against somebody. So I just wanted to be nice. As soon as the tzaddik saw this, oh, okay, I'm not going to accept this gift that you want to give me. And on top of it, I'm no longer able to judge your case. Why? My opinion is biased. My opinion is no longer the same clean opinion before I knew you and before I saw this gift. So not only is a person not allowed to accept the gift, but on top of it, he's not allowed to judge. That's the way the Chachamim paskind. Interestingly enough, there was a tzaddik, one of the Amoraim, Rav Anan, who, the Gemara says, somebody came up to him and wanted to give him a basket of small gildana fish. And Rav Anan says to him, what's your business here? He says, I'm going to be in your court. So Rav Anan, of course, like the rest of the sage, says, I'm not going to accept this gift, and I'm not going to be a judge. I can't be a judge anymore. You have to go somewhere else. So the guy says to Rav Anan, no, I wasn't giving you this gift because you're the judge. I just wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of bikurim. Bikurim is the type of gift you would bring at the time of the Bet HaMikdash. But the Chachamim say you call all gifts that you give to Chachamim, to Talmidei Chachamim, like it's bikurim. He says, I wanted to give the gift to the Chacham. Your Chacham gives me a schut to give you gifts, to give you tzedakah and so on. So Rav Anan says, now that you're saying that you really want to fulfill a different mitzvah that has nothing to do with the court case, I can take your gift, but I still can't be the judge in your case. So he sent a letter to Rav Nachman. He told him, please, you be the judge. I can't be the judge. And he didn't explain why. So Rav Nachman thought, he can't be the judge on this case, perhaps because this guy is a family member of his, and you're not allowed to be a judge in your own family, because it's a bias, it's an obvious bias. And Rav Nachman didn't understand and thought that this is a family member, and he expedited the case. So what transpired out of this? Eliyahu Navi, Zachur Letov, used to study Torah with Rav Anan, the first one that accepted the gift as a result of the guy doing the mitzvah, if you will. Eliyahu Navi used to study Torah with Rav Anan. And he used to teach Rav Anan what we call today Tana Devei Eliyahu. The book Tana Devei Eliyahu was between Eliyahu Navi and Rav Anan. But as soon as this happened, Eliyahu Navi stopped coming to Rav Anan. Rav Anan knew something's wrong. He started fasting. Fasting literally to the point of nearly dying. And taking on himself a lot of suffering to do tshuva even without knowing what he did. Eventually, Eliyahu Navi came to him, but this time it wasn't the same type of Eliyahu Navi. This time he didn't look like him like a regular person. This time he looked to him like the scary angel that he is. And Rav Anan was so scared that he had to hide in a little box. And they had to study that way. Rav Anan would be in a box listening to Eliyahu Navi teach Torah, and Eliyahu Navi would teach him. And that's why the Tana Devei Eliyahu, there's two parts. There's two parts. The part where he's in a box is called Eliyahu Zuta. Eliyahu Zuta. So the point is here is that although Rav Anan didn't violate the law, still the pristine holiness that was expected of him from Shamayim, from Eliyahu Navi, that was literally allergic to sins, allergic to anything that's not 100% kosher, already put him in a different, we don't have the same, you hurt our relationship. Why? You're not 100% anymore. You're like 99.99999, if we could say such a thing. At least that was the viewpoint of how Eliyahu Navi saw it. So we see from here that if Eliyahu Navi judged it so harshly, needless to say, if somebody actually does accept a bribe and judges the case. So the Chazon Ish teaches us here that bribes are not something that you could disregard, think that they're not significant, that you could overcome it. They're not like anything else, because bribes are something that actually creates a certain tum'ah, a certain impurity in the world that is much more powerful than you can imagine. It's powerful enough to change nature. And he gives us an example today. An example that will actually also elaborate on some slight differences in the way that the Rama Paskins in the Shulchan Aruch versus Rabbi Yosef Karo. Chazon Ish says, when it comes to the dispute between two people, the Torah prohibited the participation of a particular judge only in the case of bribery given during the trial. It did not prohibit the person from judging a friend or enemy, the only exception being one's closest friend, or someone who hates the prospective judge so much that he has not spoken to him for 3 days, according to one opinion brought by the Rama in Choshen Mishpat. Even though there is a definite natural tendency to act in favor of a loved one and in disfavor of a hated foe, the special forces of impurity, of tum'ah, relating to bribery are lacking here. And therefore the Torah is completely certain that the sage, serving as a judge, will judge fairly, and that his heart will not be swayed by his natural desires, for the avoidance of such behavior is already a habit for him, second nature for the sage, for whom truth is always a guiding star and justice will reign. So in this paragraph, the Rama gives us an enormous amount of information. Okay, first and foremost, he tells us that this dispute between those two people and them having this judge of whether he has a bribe or no bribe is not like anything else you compare it to. Why? Because he says that the Torah prohibited that the participation of a judge only in a case of a bribery, but not in a case of there being a bias of friendship or all type of other feelings. So to understand that, we actually have to go to the Shulchan Aruch. In the Shulchan Aruch, in Choshen Mishpat, in Ilchot Dinim Siman Zayin, 7. It says the following: אסור לאדם לדון למי שהוא אוהבו, אף על פי שאינו שושבינו, ולא רעו, אשר כנפשו, ולא למי ששונאו, אף על פי שאינו אויב לו, ולא מבקש רעתו. אלא צריך שיהיו השני בעלי הדינים, שווים בעיני הדיינים ובליבם, ואם לא היה מכיר את שום אחד מהם, ולא את מעשיו, אין לך דיין צדק כמוהו. Translation. It says you're not allowed to judge somebody, to be a judge on somebody that you love, even if it's a person that that shuviveno is like someone that you have such a close relationship with that he is like someone you would have to arrange your wedding. Now he says it doesn't even have to be somebody that's that close. Anybody that you have a relationship with. And also in a positive way. And also anybody that you hate. Even if this person that you hate is not really looking to hurt you, still there's an animosity between you. He says rather it's supposed to be where the judge is looking at the two people, the two parties, the prosecutor and the defendant, as equals. Doesn't see the difference between them. And he says ideally it would be if he doesn't know either one of them. He has no relationship or knowledge of either one of them. That's the perfect judge. So from here we see that if you have any relationship whatsoever with this person, obviously you have some type of feelings. You like him, you dislike him. So therefore you can't be a judge. But the Chazon Ish is saying no. It didn't prohibit us from judging a friend or enemy. How could it be? That's because the Chazon Ish is Ashkenazi and he went by the Ramah. And the Ramah, he also is part of the Shulchan Aruch. And this is one of the machlokot. This is one of the differences between the psak of the Ramah and Rabbi Yosef Karo in the Shulchan Aruch, to show you a couple of things. Number one, that there are times where there's a disagreement, but it's not as wide as people make it seem, where one says eat and the other one says don't eat. One says it's this pig is allowed and the other one says pig is not allowed. It's not necessarily that big. In most cases, it's slight differences of how they interpret certain words that show what's the difference. I'll show you. So the Ramah, it's also quoted in all Shulchan Aruch. He's saying, "V'yesh omrim shebeson'o mamash, dayenu shelo diber imo shlosha yamim mitoch ha'eva." He says, but there are those that say someone who really, really hates him. Not just dislikes him, but really hates him. Like something exceptional. That he's not even talking to him already for 3 days because of how much animosity there's between them. Or avomamash. That he really, really loves him. To such an extent that he is the person that would set up his wedding. V'yesh omrim dekol she'eno oavo o son'o mamash mutar laduno. And he says, and there's those, the two, he's quoting the two here. He says, and there's those that say, he's not just quoting, so I heard it in a bar. There's other Rishonim. He says, there is an opinion that when the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot, page 105, was talking about who could be a judge, who can't be a judge, one that hates or one that loves can't be a judge. It says not just anyone that hates or anyone that likes, but rather those that say, that paskin, that it's someone that really, really hates or someone that really, really loves. And if it's a simple, yes, he likes him, or they don't like each other, but it's not like something out of the ordinary, they're allowed to be judges for such a person. They're allowed to be judges, and anyone that wants to be, do even more than that, he says, that's midat chasidut, that's above and beyond what you need to do. Meaning, if you want it to be like what Rabbi Yosef Karo says, where practically if there's any pre-existing relationship between you, because if there is, that means you have to have some feeling. You either like the guy or you don't like the guy. And Rabbi Yosef Karo says if you have a relationship there, you can't be a judge. It's almost to that extent. Some will say it's maybe a little less, but nonetheless, it's almost to that extent where if there is like a relationship between you, let's just say, example, if you're the Dayan is the Rabbi, and the Talmid is one of the people in the court. The Rabbi cannot judge for his own Talmid. On the other hand, the Ramah says, "V'kol sheken she'arav yachol liyot dayan letalmido." The Ramah says, in fact, we know from this that the Rabbi can be the judge for his own Talmid. Why? Because not all rabbis have a really close relationship with their Talmidim. that they love him so much or they hate him so much. It could be just a relationship, so he could be his rabbi, but not necessarily so close to him that that he loves him so much that he's going to rule in his favor. So that's how the Rama paskins. Again, it's a slight difference between Rabbi Yosef Karo and the Rama. One says nothing at all. One says no. You're allowed to judge if you know each other, even if you're his rabbi. It can't be extreme feelings of love or animosity. As long as it's, let's say, standard, it's fine. It's fine. If you don't love him a lot or you don't hate him a lot, you could be the judge. Now, that's how the Chazon Ish paskins here, according to the Rama. He's Ashkenazi. And he says that according to this, we see from, what do we learn from this? What do we learn from this? Aside from what we just learned, what do we learn from this? The Chazon Ish says, look, the Torah did not prohibit us from judging a friend or an enemy. The only exception is one's closest friend or someone who hates the prospective judge so much he hasn't spoken to him in 3 days. Meaning, like what the Rama paskin, someone you really, really love or someone you really, really hate. Those are excluded from being the judges. Those are excluded from being judges. But if it's just a simple friend or simple enemy, a friend or foe, but there isn't like huge feelings there, they're even allowed to judge, and the Torah is not afraid of allowing such a judge. Meaning, what? That even though there is definitely a natural tendency to act in favor of a loved one and a disfavor of a hated foe, the Torah is not afraid of it. Like it's afraid of bribery. Meaning, if there is an extreme hatred towards this person, you're allowed to be the judge, because the Torah says we're not afraid of just the fact that you don't like his face. We're not afraid of that. You're a dayan, you'll still judge the right way. If you like the guy, he is, he's somebody that he's in your keilah. You like the guy, but you're not like best friends with him or anything like that. You could judge. We're not afraid of that, Torah says. Torah says not afraid of that. Not afraid of that, like I'm afraid of somebody that gave $100 bribe to the judge. That $100 is much more scary than that relationship that could be a 20-year relationship of animosity or of student-rabbi relationship, but again, not really, really severe. Just standard. That $100 is much, much more significant. Why? Because that $100, needless to say, more money, creates special forces of tum'ah, of impurity, that come from the bribery, which the love or hatred does not have. And therefore the Torah is completely certain that the sage that's serving as a judge will judge fairly, and that his heart will not follow his natural desires. The natural desire to judge against the guy he doesn't really like so much, or the natural desire is to judge for the guy he does like a little bit. Right? No, he's not going to follow his natural desires. Why? Because he has trained himself already with the trait of truth that Rav Kanievsky mentions in the first chapter of Orchot Yosher, that the Midat Emet, he already has become a habit for him to say the truth, to live the truth. That he's not going to forsake that truth, that habit that's within him, for that relationship that he has, favorable or unfavorable. While for the $100 bribe, he will. Why? Because that $100 bribe creates an impurity much greater than the $100 represents. It creates an enormous level of tumah, of impurity, that could literally destroy the world. Now, this is not logical. Why is it not logical? Because logic will tell us that liking or disliking your neighbor automatically is more powerful than a $100 bribe. Like, what's $100? The judge is a billionaire. What's $100 going to do for him? So it's not logical, this law. That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. Took us an hour and a half to get to this point, but that's exactly the point. It's not looking to be logical. This is what's called divine logic. Chok. It's divine logic. It's not something that will make sense to a regular human brain. It's only makes sense to Da'at Torah, to the opinion of the Torah. And that is the opinion that is always right. That is the opinion that we have to live by. And those that forsake it, those that say, no, but come on, that can't be what God thinks. Why is it so severe? It doesn't make sense to me. They're simply a little korach. This happened to Rabbi Ephraim. It also happened to me a few times, where you have certain women that unfortunately got a little bit too much education from the liberal world. And they say, listen, this family purity stuff, I don't know if it's for me. And then you tell them, no, family purity is one of the foundations of Judaism. Without family purity, there is no Jewish marriage. In fact, even if the husband does not observe Shabbat, the Bet Din will typically tell you to stay married. But if the husband does not allow you to keep family purity and go to the mikveh, the Bet Din will say get a divorce. Same thing vice versa. If the wife doesn't want to keep Shabbat, husband is typically advised to stay with her and have patience to eventually get her to do tshuva. But if the wife is not willing to go to the mikveh, then you have to get a divorce, because you can never be with her. You can never be with her if she doesn't go to the mikveh. So there's no marriage without a mikveh. Now, of course, this doesn't always fly with some people. And we try to educate them about other tamim. Say, you know, why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the mikveh? There's many things. There's rules, there's this, there's that. But sometimes there are teachings that they read that they find a favor in their eye. Sometimes it's taught to them, sometimes they read it somewhere, which is that there is a saying, there is a teachings in the Gemara that says that one of the reasons why HaKadosh Baruch Hu has this family purity is so that the wife is viewed by her husband the same as she was when she was his kala at the day of their wedding, once a month. Meaning that each month for the rest of their marriage, 30, 40, 50, 70 years, KIRUV, every month she's going to look to him like she is his kala that he originally got married to. So a girl sees that, oh, that's my number one concern. She says, wait a minute, I was hoping that he's not going to get bored of me, that he's not going to look elsewhere, that he's not going to cheat, that he's not going to this. You're telling me that this mikveh is going to help me gain my husband's attention, that I'm going to look to him as if he just got married to me every month? Sure, I'll do this mikveh. Sure. So they like it, and they start keeping it. Where does the problem begin? The problem begins when that's the only thing she knows about it. And that's the only thing she holds it for. And that is something that becomes temporary. Why temporary? Because one day she may be blessed and she'll have pregnancy. Pregnancy come to our life, shtabach shimo, a little baby, maybe more. And all of a sudden, she asks the rabbi says, listen, I just want to let you know, as soon, mazal tov, that you're pregnant, you're getting close, just to let you know, as soon as you break the water, as soon as the water breaks, that's it, you're considered nida. Your husband is not allowed to touch you. Well, what do you mean, Rabbi? What are you talking about? I thought this whole family purity is all about the love for the wife, so I'm still beautiful to him. How could it be that at my weakest moment, when I need him the most, I need the most amount of affection, I want him to help me with the pregnancy, massage my feet, hold my head, hold my hand, hold it there, tututa. How could it be? He's not allowed to touch me. What do you mean? This is extreme. You're fanatic. I don't think that's what God meant. I don't think that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Maybe you misheard. Maybe it's because you're Sfaradi. Maybe it's because you're Ashkenazi. Maybe it's because of this. Ooh, and it's not once, twice, 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 10 times. Almost every woman that's not taught the right way says the same exact thing. Almost every woman that's not taught completely says the same exact thing. Now, of course, there are some righteous women that accept it. Okay, not allowed, but that's not common. Why? Because usually when they find this stuff out, they're very, very emotional. Needless to say, there's a baby inside them. They feel a lot more vulnerable. It's not such an easy thing, so it's nothing to frown upon or make fun of, but it's a reality. Now, hence the problem. If this young tzadikah is going to hold her ground and say, listen, I agree with going to the mikveh before I got pregnant. I agree with keeping family purity before I got pregnant. I agree with all the things you said, but this, I don't agree. That as soon as the water breaks, my husband can't touch me and he won't be able to touch me for another, probably usually 2 months, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on which doctor you go to, and your body, and the siyata dishmaya. He's not able to sleep in my bed, he's not able to hold my hand, especially when I'm delivering, because especially when I'm delivering, I want my husband to be there with me, to share the moment with me, and she doesn't want to agree with that. Oh, she is a little bit baby koach. No disrespect, but that's what it is. Why? Because she's put an entire endless ocean of Torah into our little mind. Where as soon as the Torah, that's an endless ocean, didn't make sense to her, she does not want to accept it. And unfortunately, this happens. Where when you sell mitzvot to people, you tell them, listen, if you keep Shabbos, you'll become rich. If you protect your BEIT, you'll become rich. If you do ta-ta-ta, then you'll be rich. Or you'll find your zivug. Or you'll do this, or you'll do that. If you start selling mitzvot, you end up selling HaShem for nothing. And it ends up being a problem at some point or another. Why? Because eventually life happens and that person is put up to the test. And many times they don't have the tools to deal with it. What tool do they need? To know. Just as the Chinuch, Sefer HaChinuch, written 800 years ago. He says it in the introduction, he says it in some of the mitzvot inside. Don't think for a moment that what I write, meaning what he's writing, is the reason why HaShem gave us these mitzvot. Even though the entire series is the reasons for the mitzvot, the things we learn from them and so on. He says, don't think that this is the complete reason for all of the mitzvot. For a second, don't think such a thing. The real reason for all of the mitzvot is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded them. And that's it. And who are we to think that we can question divine logic? Divine knowledge. Who are we? Meaning, the reason for every single mitzvah, Shabbat, Brit, Tarat Mishpacha, Kashrut, Pidyon Ben, whatever you want, any mitzvah, is because God decreed it. That's the reason. Why did God do this? Because He said so. Why did God do that? Because He said so. Why do I have to do this? Because God said so. Why do I have to do that? Because God said so. Why does He say so? Because He's God. That's the real reason. But since HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in His mercy, knows His creation is not always going to accept because I said so, He gave us a little bit of taste on most things. But He also gave us clarification that don't do it because it makes sense to you. That's what Korach did. Korach tried to make sense of the mitzvot, and as soon as it didn't make sense, he dropped the whole thing, and he's still screaming to this day in the Gehenom that will never end. But the very following parasha after Parashat Korach is Parashat Chukat. Zot Chukat Torah. What's Chukat Torah? The Para Aduma. The Para Aduma, the red heifer, is the one law in the Torah nobody understands. Even Shlomo HaMelech did not understand this mitzvah. Why does a pure cow make someone that's impure pure, but the one that purified becomes impure? And all types of things that are not logical. To teach us this red heifer, that's the entire laws of the Torah. Meaning, it's not logical. The logic that I showed you is logic. But it's not the real reason. The real reason is because of divine logic. And divine logic is not logical. It can be logical at times, but that's not because everything about it is logical. What you understood about it is logical. But there are certain parts about it that are not logical. And we have to accept it, fulfill it, and love it. Despite it being logical or not logical, understandable or not understandable, because we are doing it because God commanded it. And that's in essence what Rav Kanievsky tried to teach his whole life through his dedication to Torah. When people would try to give him kavod for how much he's learning and how he's doing, he would never really understand why they're giving him kavod. He writes himself, he says, someone that wastes time will go to the 6th level of Gehenom. Meaning, if I have an extra minute or 2 minutes, that I could be learning Torah and I don't, I'm going to get punished for it. That's how he looked at the world. His own son said in Esped, he said, people have all these great stories, but what people don't know is the stories we saw with our own eyes. Where Rav Kanievsky, every day when you arrive, the food would be ready. The Rabbanit would always make sure that the food is ready. But Rav Kanievsky had a rule. He doesn't eat without the Rabbanit. So there was sometimes that the Rabbanit was a little late by 2 minutes. Nothing to speak of. 2 minutes, a minute and a half. And the children would see their father not waste a second. As soon as he arrived and the Rabbanit is not there, he'd grab a sefer and start learning. That extra minute and a half, you could just be, look at the ceiling, think about, something. No. You grab a sefer and start learning. Why? Because if you have an opportunity to learn Torah and you don't, that's punishment. Now, does that make sense to an average person? No. But to a Rav Kanievsky that lived the Torah, how could it not make sense? How could it not make sense? God said so. What do you mean? You see, Rabotai Yekarim, when we are looking for things to make sense to us, we're bound to fail. We're bound to fail. And typically the people that try to fool people are the same ones that sound like philosophers, that try to make sense of things. How do they try to make sense of things? They give you one example that makes sense and a bunch of things that don't make sense in order to show you how what you've been taught doesn't make sense and what they're saying makes sense. But the entire Torah is spoken to Moshe Rabbeinu in a fashion where HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Zeh chukat Torah. The Torah is like the red heifer. It's not supposed to make human sense. It's not supposed to make human sense. It's supposed to do because God said so. Now, of course, when somebody does things because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said so, and not because it makes sense, everything changes. Everything changes. If somebody does things because it makes sense, then it creates limitations. For example, somebody that gives guidance to people about Shlom Bait. So it makes sense that you're going to give them guidance for Shlom Bait, and they're going to pay you an X amount of money per hour, because your time is worth money, right? So, they want an hour of your time, you want $500, $1,000, whatever amount of money. Now, what about the fact that after they've gone to a few sessions, you have confirmed that they have a lot of marriage problems that are not going to work themselves out, and they need guidance, but they have another problem. They don't have any money to pay you. If you work in the same fashion as the professionals of the world, whether those professionals call themselves coaches, psychiatrists, rabbis, whatever they call themselves today, then what ends up happening is that, oh, listen, I'm sorry, I can't take you because I need to make a living. Yeah, but we have marriage problems that you helped us this far. We need to fix those marriage problems. I understand you need to fix your marriage problems, but I also need to fix my financial problems. So what, you're going to just abandon us? No, I'm not abandoning you. I just have to help myself. And that's in essence the logic. The logic that makes sense is that in the world we live in today, that's what makes sense. If he only works and only guides for a living, for money, then there's a limitation. As soon as there's no exchange of money, there's no guidance. Same concept goes with somebody that speaks for money. Says, listen, I'm here to motivate and inspire and do everything possible to help your community. Great, okay, so come. No, I need you to pay me $10,000, $5,000, $20,000. Oh, so if we don't give you the $20,000, you're not going to come? No, I'm not going to come. What are you doing instead? Nothing. So you'd rather do nothing than come? No, it's not that I'd rather do nothing. I'm only going to come if you give me the $20,000. So it makes sense. In the world we live in, it makes sense. The time is worth money, right? But that's not how Torah is. You see, Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the Torah for free. Even a donkey that he rode to free us from Egypt, we didn't pay him for it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the Torah for free. The Torah is full of sacrifices. And Chachamim, that the greatest Chachamim, did what they did, not because they were making a living out of it, but rather because they were looking to help people. Now, of course, there is ways to make money in a respectable way, in a legitimate way, and all types of things. But if the driving motive of what you're doing is that bias, is that bribe, is that logic, that will eventually hit a wall. And I'll give you an example. The Midrash Rabbah in Parashat Tzav, in the ninth siman, in the ninth section in the ninth siman, has a story. And the story goes that Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes used to give drashot. Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes, imagine the lectures by Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. I could just only imagine in my dreams, maybe. What it would be like music in Gan Eden. Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes giving a lecture. So there was one woman that was married to some scorner, to some clown, but she was a tzadikah, and she loved the lecture. She loved the shiurim of Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. So one night, it was a Friday, she found herself that she finished preparing for Shabbat early, and she wanted to go to the shiur by Rabbi Meir. And the words of Rabbi Meir were so beautiful, and the stories were so extraordinary, everybody in there lost the track of time. And they kept going and going and going. And as soon as the Rabbi Meir finished his shiur, she looked at the clock and she realized, oh, I'm a few minutes late. As soon as she got back home, she saw her angry husband, who's been counting the seconds that she is late, each time saying what he's going to do to her and how he's going to torture her as soon as she gets home. How dare she be late and make me wait for my food? And as soon as she arrives, says, where have you been? So, oh, no, I'm sorry, I was listening to the shiur by Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes, Tana. This scorner, this Rasha, says, I swear that you're not going to enter this house until you spit him in the face. And he throws her out of the house. Now this poor tzadikah, what is she going to do? Okay, so she was late a few minutes. Not because she was shopping and doing something stupid. She was listening to shiur Torah, and she was late, a mistake. Sorry. No. Sorry, my soup had to wait a couple of minutes. No way. You're not going to come into the house until you spit him in the face. No more, no less. And he's not changing. 3 weeks she's outside of the house. 3 weeks, the Midrash says. 3 weeks. Her friends see her. She says, what, you're still fighting? She says, I don't know. I'm not going to go. He wants me to go spit in the rabbi's face. I'm not going to go spit in the rabbi's face. They say to her friends, say, listen, your husband, he's not going to change his mind. We know your husband. Your husband is not exactly a tzaddik. He's not going to change his mind. The Rav is speaking again today. Perhaps you should go, and maybe, I don't know, something will happen. Maybe you should do something. So the poor lady, she's outside for 3 weeks. She goes to the shiur. When she arrives, the Midrash says, Rabbi Meir Baranes had Ruach HaKodesh. And he sees exactly what happened to this poor woman. Now her friends are trying to push her. Listen, go, do something. She goes, no, chas v'shalom, are you crazy? So Rabbi Meir sees that she's really a tzadikah. So he says, is anybody here in the women's section know how to get rid of the ayn hara? I have a lot of pain in my head from the ayn hara, from the evil eye that people have on me. And I need somebody that knows the exact trick of how they could spin in my eye and therefore eliminate the ayn hara. So the friends push the tzadikah, says, go, you do it. No, it's your chance. They push her up, and she goes up to Rabbi Meir Baranes. But she's such a tzadikah, she says, no, Rabbi, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I don't really know anything about ayn hara. I'm just a simple woman. I can't do it. He goes, no, you know, you're good, you're perfectly fine. No, but I don't know. He goes, no, you know, it's fine. I need you to spit me in the eye 7 times. Spit me in the face. Now the rabbi says, okay, she spit in his face 7 times. In front of everybody. After she finishes, Rabbi Meir says to her, now you go tell your husband. She didn't know that Rabbi Meir knew from Ruach HaKodesh. He says, now you go tell your husband, you asked me to go spit him in the face 1 time. I spit in his face 7 times. Just for you. Woman went home happy. Shlom Bayit arrived. The Talmidim, the students of Rabbi Meir, said to the Rav, Kvod Rav, isn't that desecration of the Torah? If it's really for the sake of getting rid of ayn hara, why wouldn't we be the ones that you choose to do it? Why in front of all these people? And if it's for the sake of this woman, because her husband is giving up problems, why should the Rav suffer such a desecration? An embarrassment. Having a woman spit in his face because of some scorner. Rabbi Meir Baranes says to them, am I better than my maker? Am I better than a Kadosh Baruch who is willing to erase his own name just for the sake of creating Shlom Bayit? From there we learn a few things. Someone that is looking to do the will of Hashem will try to emulate Hashem, but even more so, they cannot have the logic of mankind, because mankind's logic would never do such a thing, would never allow such an embarrassment, would never allow such things to happen for free, would never allow such things to even be in their midst. Why? They have their own honor to protect. You see, Rabotai Karim, one of the greatest things that we have as a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is that He gave us Chachamim to explain the Torah to us, to tell us why the Torah is right and we are wrong, and why we should be extremely happy about it. Not happy that we're constantly wrong, but rather happy that we have the right answer finally. That we can identify the right answer when we see it. That when we see the Torah, we don't have to rely on our own logic that is biased, that's bribed by our Yetzer Hara, that is simply not enough to get a consistent, correct answer. One of the things that I learned from last week's parashat Tzav, is that really without commentary, you can't understand anything. But I actually think even more so, that there are certain things that it's impossible to understand for the average person, not only without commentary, but without commentary that's intended for children. I actually think that most converts and Baalei Tshuva, and quite frankly, even people that haven't learned for a while, should spend more time reading their children's books than they read the adult books. Because some of the explanations you have in the adult books simply do not click. Don't click. Especially when it comes to difficult subjects like korbanot, tumah, tahara, and so on. But when you look at the children's books, like I saw one of the books that my kids have, in last week's parasha, the explanation they had in Parashat Tzav, and I think that the explanation they have is so good, it's so good that it really should be a book that adults read. But not just that parasha, but every parasha. But that's the thing. When a person is looking to make themselves look good, they try to cater to people that are on an upper echelon. When someone is looking for truth, they're just looking for anyone that's looking to hear the truth. This is why in the previous generations, in the generations of Rabbi Akiva, the greatest sages, you would find them in the kindergartens. You would find them teaching children Torah. Rabbi Chia, one of the greatest sages that ever lived. The Gemara says that if it wasn't for Rabbi Chia, there wouldn't be Torah in the world today. How did he make sure of doing that? He taught children. He taught children Torah to make sure that all of these remote places that didn't have a synagogue and a rabbi and books and so on, he made sure that he went there and he taught them Torah. Baruch Hashem, today, the Torah is wider than the ocean. There's easy access to Torah everywhere in the world, whether it be in the local bookstores, online bookstores, or simply online for free. There's no shortage of Torah in the world today. You can get videos like this one, or books, or a combination thereof, where anyone that's looking for the truth can easily find it. The problem is that most people are not always looking for the truth, but rather something that already agrees with their predisposition, with what they already think. And as soon as the Torah contradicts what they already think, that's when they look for something else. A different speaker, a different rabbi, a different book. And unfortunately what that means is that they're not looking for truth. They're not looking for Torah. They're just looking for a friend to agree with them. That's not what Torah is there for. Torah is a guide, a rule book of how we live in this world and earn eternity of good. That's what the Torah is for. If we're looking for something to agree with us, that means we're already assuming we are right and that we know everything. And I can assure you, the longer you live, the more you realize how little you knew and how little you already know. And when you learn more, that knowledge of how little you know grows even further. Because the more you know, the more you realize how big the Torah is, how big the ocean is, relative to how small you are. This is why the greatest sages were always the most humble. They knew the most amount of Torah and had the most amount of reasons to be proud. But yet it was the exact opposite. The average shmo that perhaps learned Daf Yomi, maybe even finished a few tractates in the Gemara, perhaps even finished the Shas, thinks of himself as a Talmid Chacham that is second to none and is on his way to be somebody special you shouldn't look down on. But Rav Kanievsky would look at you like you have 5 heads when you gave him kavod, not understanding why you're giving him kavod. Now, why not understanding why you're giving him any honor whatsoever? He knows more Torah than that person's going to know in 10 lifetimes. But kavod is not even part of his vocabulary. Whereas the other one, all he wants is kavod. How could it be? The more knowledge you have, the more you realize how big the Torah really is. But unfortunately today, Rabotai, people think that the greatness of a rabbi is based on how many subscribers they have, how many followers they have, how big is the building that they have to preach to people, how groomed their beard is, and perhaps maybe even how white it is. If their hat is this way, if their kippah is that way, if their jacket is this way, if they have students, if they have followers, if they have this, if they have that. But yet, the greatest among us didn't even look at those things. Whether it be Rav Kanievsky, Rav Yashiv, the Stipler Gaon, Rav Ovadia, Rav Wasserman, Chaim, all of the greatest were the most humble. Is it a coincidence? No. How could it be that the greatest minds, the ones that knew the most, were deathly afraid of Gehenna, deathly afraid of punishment, deathly afraid of getting any type of honor whatsoever that didn't belong to them? But yet the shmos that change the Torah on a weekly basis and invite missionaries to their synagogues are proud of their achievements. #1 rabbi on YouTube. How could it be? The difference between the two is simple. The more you know, the more you realize how much of a nothing you are, and that the only choice you have is whether you'll be a vessel that HaShem uses or not. The less you know, the more you'll tell people you know. The more you'll think that you know. The more you'll try to pretend you know. The more you'll try to make sense as if you know. The more you'll be arrogant about what you know, to the point that you actually think that what you know is really true. Rabotai, the Torah is not a children's book. It's a book for everyone. It's a book for everyone. Your children that are learning Torah in its purest form, look how easy it is for them to accept the basics of Torah, reward and punishment, purity, impurity, good, bad. But as they grow older, hopefully they stay the same. But sometimes their parents are the ones that fight them. No, I don't think God meant that. But it says so. How come it's the parents that reject the purity of the Torah of the children? Many times it's because the parents think they know more. For the truth be told, it's not because they know more. It's because they think they know more. But all they have is more bias, bribes, and human logic. The little kid doesn't have any of that stuff. He's in its purest form. And the purest form is where we should all aspire to be. Because that's where the Rav Kanievsky, the Rav Ovadia, the Rav Elyashiv, that's where they were. Like a child. Just like the Reuven, the cherubs. Kadosh Baruch Hu made the cherubs like little children. Because he wants us to be like those little children, yearning for the truth. No bias, no agenda, no my logic, no I'm right, and everyone else is wrong. What's the truth, Abba? What's the truth? The more we cleave to that, the more Kadosh Baruch Hu will use us as a vessel. The more Kadosh Baruch Hu will put us in the right direction. Who's the right zivug? What's the right job? Where should I go? What should I read? How much should I charge? How much should I pay? Da'at Torah. The more I put my own 2 cents into it, of what makes sense to me, the more I'm putting traps in front of myself. And I promise you, not a single person in history ever lost by following Da'at Torah. It may seem like some people lost, but I can assure you they didn't. When you see the entire picture couldn't be better for the person that followed the Torah. While the rest of the people that didn't follow the Torah, sometimes it looks like they won at first and eventually lost. Sometimes they lost right away, but I can assure you, they lost nonetheless at some point. And they lost big. Whereas the one that went with Da'at Torah never lost. Not in the beginning, the middle, or the end. They were winners from the second they realized that the Torah's logic, that divine logic, is always going to be superior to my logic, to the human logic. And therefore, I go with it. I'm not looking to understand everything. I'm just looking for the strength to do everything. And when I do it, I already know I'm right. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.
אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישועות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל אשר יפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה.
איפה הוא גר?
בפלורידה.
פלורידה, איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה.
במיימי. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית.
חזק אותו בשמי.
קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תעבירו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.